Hello, hello, and welcome to Saturday Soundbites. I'm your host, Veronica Sofer, and I love to host this podcast because on this podcast, we talk about all things you need to know to grow your business, especially when it comes to visibility. So, we talk about branding, advertising, marketing, networking, all those juicy things that really get us seen out there. But there's another part to it, and that's the operational part. And so, today I've got a great guest that's going to help us put all those pieces together so that we are super successful in our businesses. But before we get started, let's take care of some housekeeping. If you are listening on the podcast, make sure you hit subscribe. We don't want you to miss any episodes of Saturday Soundbites. And if you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, drop us some comments, and my guest and I will be sure to circle back with you. So, with that, we're going to go ahead and launch this episode. I am pleased to announce the amazing Caroline Tanis joining us. Thank you so much for being on Saturday Soundbites.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I've listened to some of your episodes and they are amazing. So the fact that I get to join you is just such a blessing.
Oh, thank you so much, Caroline. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Now, we talked about operational expectations and things that we need to grow our business, and you've got lots of letters behind your name. So I think our audience, if you're watching on the Facebook or on YouTube on our video episode, you can see that she's got some lots of letters behind her name. But if you're listening on the podcast, they are CDFA and then MBA. Tell us what those are and why they're important to the conversation we're talking about today.
Yeah, it's like that alphabet soup, right? So I'm like, this is all I need. No more to add to this. So CDFA is Certified Divorce Financial Analyst. So I work with a lot of people, and not even just on the divorce, finance side, but also when they're getting married too, because a lot of people, even if it's a first marriage, second marriage, sometimes third, you have people who don't realize a lot of the implications of what they're doing when they're commingling finances, or, some people have an inheritance and don't know what they want to do with it. Or if you're a business owner is another big one as well. And then MBA. So I have my master's in business with a concentration in finance, which gives me a little more background with everything in the world of investments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great. And it's really important for our audience to know that you were purposely selected and invited to be on Saturday Soundbites, because while we're growing our business with our exciting visibility and all the fun things we're doing on social media and engaging with folks, there's another part of it that in order for to be successful, we have to have some sound operational processes in place. And that's what I'm really excited about talking about today. So thanks for all your expertise. Caroline, let's start with the nitty gritty. What do you absolutely need to have in place to have a successful business?
Ooh, just the one. So for me, I always think of the finance side. So I'm sure if you talk to a lawyer, they would tell you, everyone will tell you something different. So for me, the finance side is making sure you're paying yourself. So I'm a very big advocate for anyone who hasn't read it. And I follow this myself too, as a business owner, is Mike Michalowicz's Profit First and everything in there. And so he talks about not only the process of following profit first, but the psychology behind why you need to do it. And I think it definitely changes your attitude when you are paying yourself not only some type of salary, I don't care if it's $20, $2,000, $20,000, and also having your profit, right? So you own a business. And this is, I think, so much of what we connected over, because it's meant to be an asset you're building for your family. It's not just meant to be, this thing that sucks your life and sucks your money. We all want it to become, whether it's supporting our family, but also the asset for our family. So I think through using a profit first method and really getting to know your financials, you change the way you view your business.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I love how you framed it as your business being an asset. I've never heard that, or I've never thought about my business being an asset, but it absolutely is. How do you get people to change their mindset about their business, especially if they're coming from like, oh, I'm a mompreneur, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a solopreneur. Like, we take pride in the fact that we've got these cottage businesses or something like that. But how do you help people change their mindset to really be able to understand that their business is an asset?
Yeah. And that's a really great question. And I think it's something that, especially as women, we struggle with, because it's like, oh, I'm building this little thing, or, so many times we try and shrink down and make it not as big of a deal as it is. I mean, even if you have a business, and this is the conversation I'll have with a lot of women business owners too, even if you have a business that's bringing in $200 a month, okay, you're covering a bill for your family. Like, that changes things. And that's one way I say is a great step too, to start viewing it as an asset, is to say, okay, the money I'm making, just like you would with any income, what do I want that to go towards? Even if it's groceries, saving for, the kids to go to college, or if it's supporting your family and you're the main breadwinner. I mean, anything in there, when you start to change that dynamic and you assign that money a purpose, you are changing the mentality and everything that you have behind it. And so I think that's where it really starts. And having that conversation, not only with a partner or a spouse, but with yourself of what do I want this money to mean and look like, it really changes things.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to remember to use it. So my question is, how can your business grow your wealth? How does that really work, right? And we talked about, especially women, probably is impacts us more than others, is or men, I should say. We don't really look at it as a wealth building tool.
Right.
If we have gotten a little more sophisticated in our mindset, then we're like, yes, this is part of my family's growth and this is part of what's supporting my family. But how do we take it to the next level of actually building wealth?
Yeah. And I think that's too where an attorney would also come in and have we'd actually agree very much so on this, is that almost legalizing your business so that one day you could sell it, right? Like there is definitely something you are doing in your business, whether you're building a customer base, whether you're building intellectual property, whatever it might be. I don't care how small your business is. There's something in there that you are building that could be either sold or passed down to your future generations. I mean, look at how many businesses around you, probably in your own town, have passed from generation to generation. And there they were thinking they were just starting, for me in town, I think of like the local plumber or electrician who have now passed down their businesses from other generations. And it's like, they didn't start that thinking this was going to be something else, but you have no idea what this could turn into or what you are building with inside of your business, no matter the size. And so I encourage people to look inside of it and say, okay, what am I building here that could, if I went away, what could be sold? Or, if unfortunately something were to happen to me, what would I want, an insurance policy to cover, whatever it might be. And that's how you're starting to build an asset, right? Is there something in there that has value to somebody outside of you? And everyone has it. And for some businesses, it might be something a little more creative. It might be your name, your brand name, whatever it is. But I encourage you and promise you there is something in there that has a value. You just have to find it and really expand and build upon it.
No, that's a really great point. It's something for a lot of us to think about because some of us are just excited to get through the next quarter. We're not thinking about a couple years down the line or even generationally.
Absolutely.
So I'm so glad you mentioned that. What are some of the obvious mistakes that you see entrepreneurs making as they're launching their business? I'm just thinking about the new entrepreneur who's new to this space or who just came out of a corporate environment where they were used to structure and they were used to auditors and payroll and folks like that. What are some of the mistakes that you see people making?
Yeah, and it's different, I think, for every business and industry, but overall, I think it's playing it small. And so people will leave and they're like, oh, well, and it's whether you talk about it, the way you treat it. And it's once again, people making it smaller. And it's like, it has a rolling effect, right? If you're shrinking yourself down and you're making, oh, like my little side business, I had someone say it to me too. They were like, how's the little business? And I was like, well, it's not little, but thank you for asking, but you have to have that consciousness to tell people and correct them, like nobody would come up to you and say like, oh, how's your little pot? Like, no, you've created something amazing here. And it's like you and any other business owner, no matter the size, need to respect it yourself to then have other people respect it as well. So it all starts with you. And I think people forget to acknowledge that portion of things. And that's the first thing. And then it's so hard to keep building on something that doesn't have a solid foundation financially, emotionally, whatever it might be.
Yeah. And what are some of the technical things that people need to have in place? I mean, obviously there's a few go-tos, whether it's QuickBooks or whatever tools are out there. What are some basics that you want people to be thinking about as they're considering launching a business, or maybe they already have and they're not quite sure how to, they're intermingling funds into their personal account. Like, what are some basics that you need to do and don't do to not get in trouble?
Yeah, right. That's always like, how do I stay away from the IRS? Is everyone's favorite question, right? So a big thing too is be tracking all of your expenses. And I always say better safe than sorry, right? So I'm always, even myself, I keep all the receipts for everything. And let's say I took a client out to dinner. And so I literally write down on the top of that paper receipt. I don't even put in, and I probably make it a little harder myself because I'm like better safe than sorry, but I'll say dinner with Jane Doe at such and such. Here's what I had, here's what she had, and I save it and I'll take the picture and then I'll load it into my QuickBooks, because small businesses have a really high percent of being audited. And it's because I think a lot of people, number one, try and hide expenses in there. I mean, that's not for the majority who's listening, but there are a lot of people that try and hide expenses. And there's a lot of people that, slip up and put things in there that might not be business expenses. So if you're not sure, ask. Do your research, go through the IRS website, find trusted contacts of people who you can talk to, even if it's just for one-off questions, to say, would this be a business expense? Would it not? And it's like, if you're really unsure, don't put it in there. Right. So my biggest thing is track everything and also open up separate business banking accounts. Like you mentioned before, the commingling of funds. I think people start to get, they're like, well, I'm not really making that much money. And then that's when I see so many people have problems. Like I have a friend of mine who she runs a small business and she's like, yeah, I kind of forgot to pay my taxes. I'm like, how do you forget? So also realize you're entering the new world of a small business and that you're going to have different rules. You're going to have different regulations. And like I said, make sure you're finding the right people on who to follow and stay up with everything going on, and ask for help. I think that's the hardest thing too, is, we all have our own niche and what we're great at. And it's like outsource. And I know it's hard in the beginning when you don't have as many funds, but try and find even free resources or people who are great and are willing to help small business owners that will help and guide you through all this.
No, I think that's really great advice. The tracking of receipts. I'm like, yes, that makes sense. I try my best to do it. And some of us are really good about it and some of us aren't. But so maybe I'm speaking just for myself, but maybe there's some listeners out there who are diligently putting the receipts in their bag or their purse. And then all of a sudden, a week or two later, they go to take them out so that they can log them and they can't read them. Like,
yes.
How, Caroline, help us. How is it that we should be doing this to be more efficient and effective and making sure that our books are in order?
Take a picture on your phone right away. What I will do, even sometimes if I'm sitting in the car, I have a pen in my, center console. I'll write it on there. I will take a quick picture on my phone, because I'm going to end up taking a picture on my phone anyway, or using a scanner. I mean, what is the difference at that point? Then that way you have it, right? Okay, worst case, I now have a picture from my phone and also the charge on the card. But at least I know. Another good way too is if you're going to be relying on just tracking it on your card, I keep a planner too, so I can go back and look just in case something happens, and I can say, okay, that night I was having dinner, the date that the charge was posted, or if I go 2 days back based on the, it takes time to add tip and everything. Oh, that's right. I was having dinner with Jane Doe. Oh, and I have in here where I went. So it's a good way too to kind of go back and check things. Once again, better safe than sorry.
Right. No, that's a great tip, because I literally, as you were talking, I was like, well, I try really hard, but sometimes
no, me too.
The thermal paper doesn't cooperate as well.
And now everything is super, some of those receipts are so thin. All you need is your water bottle to spill in your bag and the receipt is gone. And you're like, well, now what do I do? So that's a good one too, is to be able to go back and, look at your calendar. I would use that as a last resort, but at least there's all these fail safes in there.
Yeah, no, that's true. So what are some other tips? What do business owners need to be thinking about as maybe they're in their sophomore, junior season of their business and they're not quite ready to sell, but they do have this long-term plan of building wealth and using their business as an asset? What are some other things that we need to be thinking about as we move into those more experienced seasons of our business?
Yeah, I think once you kind of reach that, we'll call it those middle years where your business is growing, you're pulling in a great revenue from it. It's balancing. I see a lot of people have a really hard time balancing reinvesting back into the business versus just being able to take money home from themselves with the profit too. So that's why I recommend too the profit first method. And he talks a lot about everything, how to balance that. But it's hard, right? To sit there and say, okay, I'm going to start bringing on employees. Well, when you reach that point of employees, there's a lot more to think about than just hiring, because some of
Right.
them want benefits. They want time off. Do they get paid time off? So another great, tip in there too, when you're in those middle years, is to start pulling in resources and finding other people that have hired, so you can know how to protect yourself, what benefits you need to offer to make sure you're doing it the right way. Because I think people just think, oh, I can just hire somebody, I'll pay them, and there's a lot more rules behind it. So that's a good tip as well. And then to also be, saving some money too for the rainy day. We talk about emergency savings for yourself and things like that, but we saw COVID, where things and people's businesses changed in the blink of an eye. And so having an emergency savings for things, all of those expenses you would have to pay, is a great way to make sure that if everything in the world shut down again tomorrow, you could sustain yourself for a couple months with payroll, other expenses, like your office space if you have one, or, memberships you have to have. Could you sustain yourself for a couple of months? Or if business just came to a halt, especially too with a lot of the economic certainty coming, it's a good thing to have to kind of help to recession proof your business.
Yeah. And recession proof doesn't mean, well, it means different things for different people, I guess, right?
Right.
Like, describe some scenarios for some of our listeners about what you suggest your clients do when they're thinking about recession proofing their businesses.
Yeah. And I think it's really trying to, and it's something I think about all the time too, right? As a business owner, is making sure that your clients, you are adding so much value that you are in that category of, this is an expense I have to pay, right? People aren't getting rid of their accountants during their session because they still have to file taxes. The odds that they're going to do it themselves, not likely. So how do you find, even if you're, a candle maker, or I'm trying to think of some other ones that are typically hard to find, how can you take your skills and add so much value into your clients' lives that they are still going to pay you, make sure you're getting paid, and say, no, we can't fire her, I need her around because they are the person that gets me to the next level or keeps the revenue coming in the door, so I need to keep them around.
Yeah, no, those are really great questions. And we did see a lot of people pivot their business and their models, and they came out of the pandemic and they actually realized that they were being more efficient or more effective or providing a better service because they were forced to. And so I think not all change is bad.
I'm really glad you said that too, because I think COVID has changed the way we think of change and how we react to things, but it's okay to pivot. I mean, that's why businesses grow and evolve. And it's honestly the ones that can't, won't, or don't, that are the ones that don't survive. It's that whole who moved my cheese concept. If the world is changing and evolving, you need to be able to do as well. What your business looked like when you started is not what it's going to look like 5, 10, 15 years from now. And honestly, it shouldn't, because life happens and things outside of our control happen. And, how we react emotionally and financially is a big deal.
Yeah, agreed. Well, Caroline, before we wrap up, I want to ask you one last question that I think is going to probably resonate with people. What is the one thing everyone needs to do today to make a difference in growing wealth in their business?
Look at your money. And it sounds so simple, but the amount of clients, the first time I sit down with them, they'll start talking about, oh, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm invested in. Like, when's the last time you opened up a statement for your retirement account, your credit card, your ATM card? Even if you're not looking at is there fraud in there? Like, some people just don't even open it up. And the best thing you can go through is do a financial audit with yourself. It's something I'll sit down with people and do too, because they are just so afraid to open the statements. Yeah. And it's like, I sit there and I'm like, I'm not judging you. I have seen everything and anything under the sun. Like, there is nothing you could pull out of here that would surprise me. But it's such an emotional thing, the way we're tied to money, but you owe it to yourself, and you can't start building wealth if you don't know where you're starting. How do you get to an endpoint if you don't know where you are? So the biggest thing I can say is, open up the statement, open up the account. It might be painful, especially with investments, looking at where things are, but at some point you have to do it in order to start moving forward.
Yeah, so, so true. All right, Caroline, tell us about how you work with folks and how they can find you. If someone heard you and it really resonated with them and they were like, yeah, I need to open up my statements. How can they connect and get some help from someone like you to get them started on the right path?
Yeah, absolutely. I love working with people too, where we have a shared and mutual connection. And so you can head to our website. It's tanisfingroup.com. And we have a contact us form that's up in the right hand corner. And so send us a message and it comes right to our team and we'll take a look at it. And you can also follow along on our Instagram account, which is at tanisfingroup. And we share a lot of good tips and encouragement. And a lot of people on there too are also sharing, like, I finally opened my statements. And so we have a great community of people that we are building over there and we'd love to connect.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show. Such great information. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was great.
All right, guys, I want you to connect with Caroline. Be sure to follow her on Instagram, connect with her. All of her contact information will be in the show notes. Even though you are growing your business and you might be a little scared and nervous about what's next, or maybe even fearful of growth, know that we've got great resources in our communities that can really help us and do it and grow our businesses in a strategic way. So don't be afraid to reach out to Caroline. She's going to have some great information for you and point you in the right direction. So with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of Saturday Soundbites. I will remind you to hit subscribe if you're listening on the podcast. If you are watching on Facebook or YouTube, drop us some comments. If you have any questions for Caroline, be sure to put them in there as well, and she will get back to you. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off by wishing you